And while the sailors on the Lincoln fight his war, while he fruitlessly drains our munitions and oil reserves, the president sleeps through his meetings. He golfs and trades stocks. See, he doesn't want to do the job. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar.
Getting better by the news cycle. That was Senator Jon Ossoff on Donald Trump's many failures, but especially his failed leadership and his betrayal of U.S. sailors on board the USS Abraham Lincoln, who are now serving an extended deployment that Trump doesn't think is long enough. They've been 9 months at sea. Now their families are condemning Donald Trump's dismissal of their horrific living conditions, including food shortages, which Trump called, quote, fake news today. They're also dealing with exhaustion and a lack of basic hygiene and essentials, as well as a decline in mental health amid reports that sailors have jumped into the sea. The grandmother of one sailor on board tells NPR this, quote, he's just depressed with the conditions over there. You really can't blame him. Donald Trump needs to be ashamed of himself to let them suffer the way that they're doing. They're over there fighting for our country, and this is the thanks they get. Democrats in Washington are now calling for an investigation and for accountability from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who insists the conditions are, quote, completely misrepresented. A letter signed by all 13 Democrats serving on the Senate Armed Services Committee and other Democratic committee leaders demand answers from Hegseth on the, quote, mounting evidence that conditions aboard the carrier have deteriorated to the point that the safety and well-being of its crew could be compromised. I want to bring in our Pentagon reporter, Priya Sridhar. She broke this story. She's also a former officer in the Navy. Ben and Tom are still here. Priya, how do the families feel? I'm sure you've talked to them since Trump has been engaged on this story about essentially being called liars.
Yeah, Nicole, I mean, they were furious when they heard those comments, especially when he said that the deployment hasn't gone on long enough. When I initially spoke to them about the conditions on the ship, I wasn't even going to venture into the politics or the policy or the mission or the end state in Iran, but they naturally just went there because I think it's really hard to talk about this deployment without talking about all of that, because that's really at the heart of what's causing this morale issue and what's causing the strain on this ship. They hit a modern day record, as I've been saying repeatedly, in the Navy for the most continuous days at sea, 208 days without a port call. That is unheard of in the Navy. And the reason for that is because there was simply no safe place to stop. And they said that what really was getting to many of these sailors, including the sailor who did jump overboard and jump off the Abraham Lincoln and ended up getting medically evacuated to San Diego, is this feeling as though this deployment was never going to end because this war was never going to end. So for them to hear President Trump say that the deployment should just go on for longer, I had several of those family members text me and say, let's see what he would have to say if his own son was on that ship.
Ben Rhodes, it is a special way that a commander-in-chief feels about the men and women whose lives are at risk while he is president. You and I both know this intimately. And it is with careful consideration that a normal president talks about the burdens carried, not just by the men and women in the military and their family members, but about when things don't go as planned. In this case, there was no plan. There was no effort to communicate a mission. There's been no effort to empathize with the families. And when the horrific conditions were reported by my colleague Priya, he called the families liars. I talked in the last block about signs that everyone is sort of too numb to realize how outrageous it is that Republicans stay quiet and keep walking along like zombies as Trump does everything to strengthen China. This, to me, is bananas, that you don't have the Republican-led Senate Armed Services Committee hauling Pete Hegseth. And I don't know why they don't ask Donald Trump what he's talking about when he says the deployments aren't long enough. This is truly unprecedented.
Yeah, and I think this is such an important story in part because it's a convergence of so many things that are wrong with the second Trump term, right? So the first is, why are we in this war in the first place? And that ties into the fact that there's probably a huge morale issue. Why are those sailors there? Do they know? Are they there to topple the Iranian regime? Are they there to eliminate a nuclear program? Are they there to open the Strait of Hormuz? Or are they just kind of there because Donald Trump got talked into doing something incredibly stupid in Iran and can't acknowledge the error that he's made? There was poor planning about the way in which they'd be resupplied. There was lack of preparation for Iran's inevitable retaliation against U.S. bases. There was lack of transparency about the destruction of the U.S. naval facility in Bahrain that was going to resupply that carrier. So across the board, in terms of what they're doing, what Trump is doing, why he's doing it, how he planned to do it, the competence with which he did it, the transparency, all of those things contributed to the fact that we have men and women who are in harm's way, who are living in squalid conditions, in desperate conditions, with no sense of an ending for their deployment. Maybe that's just now coming into play, thanks to reporting like Priya's. And then when this comes out, what it shows is the people that Donald Trump attacks are not just, Jim Comey or Somali. He shouldn't attack any of those people. There's some Somali immigrant community in Minnesota. The point is that he will attack anybody. U.S. service members who are under his orders, deployed in harm's way, he will attack if it poses any kind of political risk to him. He will use the same playbook. Oh, it's fake news. Oh, they're weak. And so just everything that is wrong is embedded in this one story.